we are here today to discuss about HIV prevention, treatment, care, and support among people who use stimulant drugs. We also have some publications that are available for you, the guides that we developed and launched quite couple of months before we all went on lockdown. So if you want the printed copies, they are available. What we are going to do today, we are going to show you parts of the capacity building program that is available for people who are interested in these services. The target group of this initiative are service providers and community-led organizations who are delivering services for people who use stimulant drugs, but also decision makers who want to get familiar with what is possible and then think about how to adapt the environment, the legal environment in the countries to make this initiative possible. So I want to ask you, first of all, because we are going to take some photos and then we are going to proudly tweet that this face-to-face meeting happened. So is anyone in the room who is not familiar with having their photos taken in this meeting? Speak now or you will end up on Twitter. Okay, so my colleague Irina will take some photos. And we will use these photos to tweet on social media and also on our website. So the trainers today will be Matt Southwell, who actually is the heart and soul and the brain behind this initiative. And he also contributed massively to the development of the technical guide, as he led the group of experts on stimulant drug use to help us put together this publication, and then worked a lot to develop what you are going to see today. So, myself, and we have two guests. We have Magdalena Harris and David, I can't pronounce your family name, from Sananim, who will talk about their experience. So let's start. So as I mentioned, this capacity building program is based on the technical guide that you already have, and you can have more copies for your colleagues if you want to. It has 5 chapters, and most important, it's introducing 8 interventions that we recommend that, if implemented at the right scale and in the right places and for the right people, will have an impact on containing or reducing the spread of HIV and hepatitis related to the use of stimulant drugs. As I said, it was a very elaborate process to develop this. We had civil society and community experts on stimulants who did the first draft under Matt's leadership. And then we had a lot of consultations with other experts and academia and colleagues from the UN agencies. And finally, going through all the clearance process, we developed the technical guide. We had webinars face-to-face before the pandemic for a short time. We went in many regions in the world, Southeast Asia, to talk about methamphetamines and amphetamines, and Middle East and North Africa again. And then we had webinars in Latin America to talk about cocaine, And in Eastern Europe, we had face-to-face webinar talking about webinar workshop to talk about new psychoactive substances. But then we developed the online module, and you have here a list of many people who contributed with their knowledge to make sure that we fine-tune and we provide the most up-to-date information. And here we are. So there are 3 parts in this webinar program. For time constraints, because this is designed for 3 days training, for time constraints today we will talk only about 2 things. One is about the stimulant drugs, and one is about 2 of the 8 interventions that we are recommending, meaning the harm reduction and the commodities, and some new developments in maintenance. So we'll start with an exercise, and I see we have a full room now, or almost full. So then, since you are here in the room, we want to know if you can spot the substances that we are talking about. And again, in this exercise, we are looking at 3 types of substances: amphetamines and methamphetamines, cocaine, and new psychoactive substances. So are you ready? I'm going to show you photos of the plants that these substances are coming from, and I want to know if you can recognize those plants. In each slide you will see 4 photos, and I'm not showing them yet, I'm just going to prepare you. So you will see 4 photos. 2 are some fruits or vegetables. 2 of these photos are, one photo is the one that is at the origin of the stimulant drug, and the other one is also used as a drug, but not as a stimulant. So let's see. First one, spot the stimulant. Which one do you think it's a stimulant drug here? So right now, those who are the the trainers and the guest speakers are kindly requested to refrain. I'm speaking from the second, third row. So, which one do you think it's the stimulant, the plant that the stimulant drug is extracted from? Okay, yeah. So, who thinks A? Raise your hand. Okay. Who thinks B? Raise your hand. Okay, we have 1 vote for B. Who thinks C? Oh, many votes for C. And who thinks D? Okay, so there's a large number who thinks D is... Okay, so now we reveal. So nobody thought soybean is a drug. Good. We had 1 person who thought the pineapple can have stimulant effects. It might, maybe. Then a lot of people thought coca plant, the basis for the cocaine, is a stimulant. And we had another plant that is a psychedelic, but it's not a stimulant. And then here you see also a little bit of the context where the coca leaves are used, but also how it looks when it's processed. So, are you ready for the next one? Okay. So, again, two innocent, two drugs. To save the time, let's see. Who thinks A, it's a stimulant drug? Okay, we have 2 votes for, oh no, we have 1, 2, 5 votes for A. Who thinks B is a stimulant? We have 5 for B. Who thinks C is a stimulant? Okay, very many think C is a stimulant. And D? 1, 2. Okay, so let's reveal. So that was black pepper, A. It's spicy. B was ephedra, who is the basis for the stimulant drug. C was cannabis, yes, classified as a drug, but not with stimulant effect. And avocado was the last one. And then here you have the plant, the ephedrine, the crystal meth, and the red tablets of methamphetamine. So let's move on. Last question. So A, who thinks A is the plant that is the basis for a stimulant drug? Nobody. B, who thinks B? Okay, no one. You can't be fooled now. You have experience now. C, 3 people, and D, all of you. Okay. So A is a cactus. B is asparagus. C is the bay leaf, and cat, the one who you rightly pointed out, is the plant that is the basis for a stimulant drug. And here is also the cultural context where it's used, the mephedrone, the NPS stimulant, and the cat, the plant. So congratulations, you know the plants quite well. So again, just to summarize, so we are talking about cocaine, methamphetamine, and new psychoactive substances. Actually today, the materials that we are going to show you are a little bit focused on new psychoactive substances, as the use of these substances is more frequent in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, and we have many participants from that part of the world. As you see, cocaine exists in various forms: powder, smokable, crack, freebase, pasta base, paco, basuco. Depending on the form, it can be injected, snorted, inserted anally. Methamphetamines, they also exist in various forms: crystals, methamphetamines powder, or pills, or tablets. They also can be administered in many ways: orally, snorted, smoked as vapor, in a pipe, inserted anally, injected in a solution, and so on and so forth. And new psychoactive substances, there are very many. They're changing all the time. Synthetic cations, and you can see there as well. Sometimes are referred as bath salts. In some countries, there are also called legal highs. Depending, on the country's rule. Depending on the form, they can be taken orally, inserted anally, or injected. Of course, why are we focusing on HIV and hepatitis among people who use stimulant drugs? Traditionally, there was a lot of focus on people who are injecting drugs, but with the use of injectable drugs shifting from heroin to stimulant drugs, and also with many studies showing the increase of HIV incidence among people who use stimulant drugs, it became obvious that we should extend the focus and look into these groups of population. But here we are talking about an intersection of many key population, because it's not just people who inject drugs, it's also men having sex with men, sex workers, transgender. They all are involved in different ways of using stimulants for different purposes. And we are looking into this because despite of the fact that in the general population you will see the incidence of HIV going down, among people who inject drugs, among people who use drugs, the incidence is on the contrary, going up. Last year, you see that 9% of all the new HIV cases in the world were among people who inject drugs. 65% of new infection globally were among the key populations that are I just mentioned. This is the latest global AIDS update that we have, and this is also the reason why we all think that in order to meet our targets and end AIDS as a public health threat by 2030, the focus should be on key populations. These are the latest data on the use of amphetamines and methamphetamines, and the reports that the UNODC received from various parts of the world is that the use is increasing, especially in Asia and North America. And actually, the request that we had to deliver this training came mainly from countries in Southeast Asia, Vietnam in particular. The increase of cocaine is also cocaine use is also seen in Western and Central Europe, and there are mixed trends in the Americas. And finally, new psychoactive substance, hundreds of them emerged on the market in a couple of years, and the use is increasing in our part of the world, particularly in Eastern Europe. How do you go back? I skipped the slide. Oh, okay, good. So, as I mentioned, the technical guide describes 8 interventions. Condoms and lubricants, and safer sex programs. We won't look into this today, but it will be available online or in webinars. Needle and syringe program and other commodities. This is the part where Matt will take over and will discuss. HIV testing services, antiretroviral therapy. Again, we won't look into this today. You have information in the technical guides. We will talk about evidence-based psychosocial interventions and drug dependence treatment, but we will focus mainly on new tendencies in maintenance treatment. And then there is prevention and diagnostic and treatment of sexual transmitted infections, hepatitis and tuberculosis, targeted information and education, and prevention and management of overdose and acute intoxication. So I will give the floor to Matt now. Continue.
So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, Monica, for the introduction. And I really appreciate, Monica has been a real driving force within the UNODC Global AIDS Programme to make sure that stimulants is properly on the agenda, and that we have seen with the response to people who inject drugs that having core interventions that are validated by the United Nations and supported with critical enablers sets a clear mandate for governments about what is expected in terms of the core response for people who inject drugs. And having this 8 interventions for people who use stimulant drugs, again, is a key advocacy tool and a key practice tool for us all. And I think the key thing about this toolkit is the toolkit exists in 3 forms. So depending on where you are in the world, you can either run the version for MPS stimulants, or for methamphetamine, or for cocaine and smoke cocaine. So there are different variations, different videos from different experts that guide us through that process. So let's do another exercise. So I'm going to ask you you're going to see a picture, and it's a picture of stimulant drugs and also the paraphernalia that people would use, might use to use those stimulant drugs. So firstly, I'm going to ask you, can you spot the stimulant drug? What is it? And if you can think of the risks, then call out the risk. So which drug do you think this one is? Crack? Yep. And the risks of crack, smoking crack like this? Yeah, so lungs. So the problem is you have cigarette ash being used to suspend the crack, and also the plastic bottle, when it is heated, it releases carcinogenic or cancer-forming fumes. So black lung or green phlegm lung from inhaling cigarette ash, and the risk of plastic fumes. Also sharing. We know that sharing smoking paraphernalia can be associated with the transmission of tuberculosis, hepatitis C, and also now we assume COVID-19 as well. And so the key harm reduction recommendation is to have straight stems, these Pyrex straight stems that give us an easy solution to allow people to smoke without paint fumes or plastic fumes or cigarette ash. Okay, so what do you reckon this drug is? Crystal meth, yes. And what would be the problems with smoking with a type of pipe like this? Yeah, so you can see the cut lip burns, so you could end up cutting the lips. What about sharing? Would sharing be a problem? Yeah, so back to TB, hepatitis, and again. So we recommend giving out these meth pipes. Another key part of the harm reduction response is to, again, give out stems. So stems for crack, meth pipes for methamphetamine, same reasons. Can you spot this drug? Southeast Asia. So this is methamphetamine tablets, red methamphetamine tablets. And you can see here the remarkably complex ways that people have of smoking methamphetamine tablets. So again, key harm reduction strategy is to give out silver foil. Not more so because it helps people use drugs efficiently, and this becomes an effective engagement tool. Same risks of sharing again. These can be the concern. Okay, so now we're getting into some more obscure MPS drugs, a little harder to spot. Can you spot what this drug is? One of the most famous MPSs, the most widely used novel psychoactive substance. Methadone, yeah, you got it right. And then the key here is around injecting. So when you inject methadone, it is a very short-acting drug, and the challenge is the rapid frequency of using. So the key message with injecting stimulants is people who inject stimulants will likely use many, many syringes. So let's make sure we give out enough syringes for people to use in large sessions, no capping supply, no one-for-one exchange. Okay, so now another MPS, harder to spot. This is one that's associated with a lot of bladder problems, so to give you a clue. If it's taken at small doses, it is a stimulant. Taken at high doses, it is actually more like a psychonauting drug. Ketamine, yes, you got it right. And the key issue here is ketamine is that many people are putting the ketamine in water, heating it to dehydrate it. What that does is it degrades the quality of the ketamine, means people use more ketamine to have the effect, and then it causes much more problems with ketamine bladder syndrome. So the key message is grind or crush your ketamine, don't heat it to break it to a powder. Safer snorting kits then become a key harm reduction strategy. Okay, another MPS. This is one that may be well known to our friends in Eurasia. This is one of the big MPS. This is the second big MPS in Eurasia. Anybody? So known in Eastern Europe as flakka, the alpha PVP. So this is another cathinone drug. Very, very widely smoked, either smoked on silver foil or in pipes. Again, these types of pipes with light bulbs are chemicals and problems involved, so the same type of meth pipe would be successful. So these are the harm reduction commodities we recommend with people who use stimulant drugs. Plentiful supply of of sterile needles and syringes, crack stems or meth pipes, different types of silver foil for methamphetamine or for smoking, like smoking on silver foil, and then safer snorting kits. And I think one of the things to watch is how difficult it is to tell all those different drugs apart. So 30% of people who responded to the Global Drug Survey said that they had used a white powder in the last year without knowing what it was. 30% of the population who responded. This is a reasonably empowered group of drug users answering an online survey. So I think it's really highlighting that drug checking is an increasingly important strategy to help people understand the drugs that they are using. So I'm going to show you now one of the videos. Throughout this toolkit, there are experts from practice experts, and I'm very pleased that many of them are drug user activists. Many of them people who have pioneered responses to stimulants are people who are also drug user activists in their work. And in this response, we have three people speaking. Alexei, who is actually here, who's been really helping us make sure this toolkit is effective for people in Eurasia and promotes an understanding of novel psychoactive substances. Myself talking about injecting and piping, and then Mark Kinsley, who was the pioneer of crack stems in the United States, explaining their role in terms of an engagement tool. And so what we're going to do is we're going to show this video. It's about 5 minutes, and then afterwards we're going to have a conversation with Magdalena about the topic.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexei Lakhov. I am from St. Petersburg, Russia, and I work in the harm reduction program, Humanitarian Action. According to the latest research, use of new psychoactive substances, predominantly synthetic psychostimulants, such as methadone and alpha-PVP or flakka, has been steadily growing all over the Eastern Europe and Central Asia region, including Russia. The acquisition of these drugs is done mainly via darknet marketplaces, forums, and messengers, such as Telegram. Stashes of drugs are placed into the halls of apartment buildings or dug into earth in forests, parks, or bushes. A buyer sends money to a dealer and receives the coordinates of this stash, or zakladka, as it is called in the region. Then a buyer doesn't always know what drug he or she finds in this stash. That's why there are a lot of examples of overdoses due to the fact that people picked up opioids instead of stimulants. And that is why it is critically important to have drug checking services. People use these drugs by smoking them via light bulbs or glass or plastic tubes, snorting them via straws or glass tubes, swallowing them, or injecting them. Therefore, our program tailored the standard harm reduction package that includes sterile syringes for people who use stimulants without injecting. We provide such people with biodegradable straws, ointments for their noses, information on stimulants overdoses, and condoms. Thank you.
People who inject stimulants can engage in a pattern of rapid, repeated injection, and using sessions or runs can go on over multiple days. Stimulants are often used in groups, particularly in a party or a chemsex situation, and often outside traditional working hours. This means that people who inject stimulants need to be supported to access adequate supplies of injecting equipment. This is why exchange models or capping supplies in needle and syringe programs are both viewed as poor practice, as it undermines the one new kit for every hit message. Since 2015, Glasgow in Scotland has seen a new HIV outbreak among people who are often homeless that is linked to an upsurge in injecting cocaine. The most vulnerable population of people who inject drugs were unable to access adequate supplies of injecting equipment when facing this new high-risk situation. Even with the best of intentions, people who inject stimulants can run out of injecting equipment and need to reuse their injecting equipment. Reusing needles and syringes when using in a group situation creates the potential for accidental sharing. Allocating each person a different coloured syringe or marking syringes with a permanent marker helps avoid this risk if reusing is needed. Hepatitis C is often transmitted through contaminated injecting spaces or paraphernalia. Creating a protected using space helps people inject drugs alongside each other while reducing the risk of such transmission. The key harm reduction messages for safer piping are: keep your pipe personal. If you do share your pipe, add a mouthguard to reduce the risk of hepatitis C transmission. If you make your own smoking equipment, then avoid the use of cigarette ash and materials that release plastic or paint fumes. These can all damage the lungs. The criminalisation of harm reduction commodities stops people who use stimulants from carrying pipes, which increases the likelihood of sharing and the risk of transmitting HCV and COVID-19.
It was an engagement tool, to be honest with you. We needed and wanted to have something that would allow us to see individuals on a more regular basis. And that was great because folks would come in, we could actually do some substance use management in regards to helping folks find better ways to stay healthier, you know, through safer smoking techniques, making sure they were hydrated, making sure that they didn't have any wounds that would cause other health problems. But it was an engagement tool to have people come more regularly to the services that we provided.
Okay, so all of the videos actually have English subtitles underneath them to make them easier to read. We've managed to pick up the wrong video in this process, but all of the videos that we're using have English subtitles to help people use them to help people who speak English as a second language. And it also means that when we're translating the toolkit, which is being done as different countries use it, then we have a transcript that can also be used to create subtitles in other languages as well. So Magdalena, do you want to come up and have a chat? So And one of the ways that we encourage people to use the toolkit is also to draw on experts from your local teams and your local areas in terms of making this work relevant to the work you're doing in country. As we've done work on this project, for example, in Vietnam, local partners have changed the data, added data to make it more relevant. And again, showcasing pioneers in your local context makes every sense in this work. So Magdalena, I know that there's sort of two areas you've been particularly involved in, is really championing the needs of people injecting. We've talked about the principles of injecting, have enough equipment. What else do you think is important for people who inject stimulants to be aware of at this point?
Okay, thanks, Matt. There's a few things. I was thinking about what's on the video is important, but also what's not being mentioned. So there's a lot of emphasis on not sharing. Whoops. But not often mentioned is reuse. And I know this is an HIV-focused program, but there is a relevance to HIV here too. And I think that we really need to interrogate and be much more ambitious in our definitions of what coverage is and what adequate NSP coverage is. So currently we have this idea that, it's termed as a high coverage is 1 needle and syringe per injection. And actually that's woefully inadequate, and it doesn't take into account the multiple times that many people try to get an injection. They may use multiple syringes and needles and syringes for each injection attempt. And this is important because people are reusing needles and syringes, and a lot of do, even if they manage to get their hit straight away, then they may hang on and use them afterwards. It's going to become increasingly blunt, it's going to cause more venous damage, and people are going to be much more likely to get abscesses, skin infections, and then also the multiple attempts means there's more blood in the environment, so that's also an HIV risk. So, there's lots of things I could talk about in terms of injecting, but I think, just to give you an example, I recently conducted a study in London, and we got survey data for 405 people who inject drugs, and we asked them how many times they injected a day. A quarter, I think it's 109, injected 4 or more times a day, and also we asked them how many attempts it took them to achieve an injection, how many skin punctures. And a quarter, again, another 109, took 4 or more attempts per injection. So this points to really serious problems around vein damage, and which can also lead to really dangerous transitions to using the groin. A lot of people are using the groin, and this then causes problems of amputation, etc. So I think coverage is a big issue, and I think for people who are using stimulants in particular, and a lot of that cohort were 60% using crack, and that we need to massively scale up needle and syringe coverage, and we need to think beyond 100% being 1 needle and syringe per injection. It's just not enough.
Yeah, and then I just thinking about cocaine particularly. We know for cocaine there's 2 big problems. One is around cocaine being a local anaesthetic. So the first time you inject cocaine, you actually anaesthetise the area, and then you have to try to inject in a site where you can no longer feel what you're injecting.
Yeah.
The other is that people are trying to inject crack and using lots of citric acid, which I know is a real passion of yours. Do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to injection preparation, particularly in relation to the components of preparing an injection. So I noticed when I came to the UK, so I'm initially from New Zealand, and I used drugs in New Zealand for a long time. I managed to inject in my arms for nearly 8 years, no problem. And yeah, that's right. And I come to the UK, and people are talking about losing the venous access in their arms after 6 months. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? There's a real problem here. And so this is why I became really interested in thinking, why are people losing the access to their peripheral veins so quickly in the UK? And one of my hypotheses is that it's too much, people using too much citric acid when they're preparing their heroin and crack. A lot of people in the UK who use heroin are also using crack, and there's a big issue around crack pipes being prohibited, so too many people are injecting heroin and crack together. They both require an acidifier to make them soluble. People are using too much acidifier. We did some preliminary research testing the acidity of the solution of people injecting heroin, and it was around about the same acidity as vinegar, highly acidic. People were injecting highly acidic solutions into their arms, destroying their veins too quickly, transitioning to the groin, missing hits, getting abscesses, ulcers, being disenfranchised from accessing healthcare and suffering unnecessarily. So it's a huge issue, and you know, and it is related to HIV because, you know, there's going to be more blood in the environment if people are missing hits, etc., etc.
Great. And I know one of the reasons we are talking about a set of guidelines around stimulants and HIV is largely because it allows us to work with our friends in the Global HIV Department at the UNODC. We would recognise, of course, that hepatitis is also another key part of the discussion around stimulants. We know that when there has been clear research showing that when crack pipes are distributed from harm reduction services and when they're gathered back again, we can clearly find traces of hepatitis on the pipe. So therefore, with lip damage, we can clearly hypothesize that this provides a direct route of hepatitis C transmission. I know you've been fighting for a research study in the UK which still does not have access to crack pipes. Do you want to say a bit more about that?
Sure. So I'm going to present more about that in a session tomorrow afternoon, but I've put in a grant for a study to try and achieve legislative reform in the UK, because currently, even though injecting equipment is provided, safe inhalation interventions for people who smoke crack, people who smoke methamphetamine are prohibited. And so drug and alcohol services, harm reduction services, needle and syringe programs are not allowed to give out pipes. And really there's absolutely nothing for people who use crack in relation to harm reduction services in the UK. They're very disenfranchised, their needs aren't being recognised, there's no reason for them to come through the door. All that's been offered is psychosocial interventions, which is just not good enough. You know, there's a need for pharmaceutical interventions, which I think we're going to hear about afterwards, but also just equipment provision. And that means that there's a recognition of people's existence and there's a reason for them to go in the door. And then if they actually need help, if they want to get tested for HIV or hepatitis C, then they've become familiar with accessing a service and they're able to then do it. But it's important for other reasons, because since pipes are prohibited in the UK, sure, you can buy them, they're sold as ornaments and stuff, but you still have to pay, you know, maybe £6 or whatever. So a lot of people make their own pipes, and they may make them from glass bottles, they may use tin cans, they may use old asthma inhalers, plastic bottles, and there's a lot of issues here in that most of the materials are not heat resistant, they may have sharp ends, so people will get cuts and burns on their lips. Then if they're sharing pipes, that's obviously an HIV or hepatitis C transmission potential risk there. And I think in relation to COVID, I thought COVID was the ultimate opportunity to push for legislative reform, because if pipes are prohibited, then people are obviously going to share pipes more. Any sharing of pipes is going to be a COVID risk, obviously. So we put in a request for a letter of comfort, which is like a memorandum of understanding between the police, from the police to service providers, to allow for crack pipe provision during COVID. And we had police and crime commissioner support in the UK, but it got kicked out at the level of the Home Office. They didn't like it because it might encourage use. We have 180,000 people already who use crack in the UK. So I think if people are going to use crack, they're already doing it, and we need to find ways of engaging with them, recognising their needs, finding out what those needs are, and providing them with safe equipment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Magdalena. That's really cool. Yeah, and so then we have, so as the course, so thank you, Magdalena, for this. And I think it's I think this showing the power of researchers' advocacy, this dynamic relationship between policymakers, technical advisors, and advocates on the ground. When we have this data, it gives us so much more ability to fight for the good practice that we know works, but actually having the evidence to show that it works obviously makes it a much more powerful argument. And so in the variations of this course, so there are in these videos we have the contributions from myself and Mark remain consistent, but then in the one on methamphetamine we have Jirasak from Ozone in Thailand and Pascal Tanguy from Canada speaking about methamphetamine use, and then in the one on cocaine we have Mark Kinsley from the United States and Rhiannon Thomas from Counterfeit talking about cocaine. So depending on which drug you're interested in, you can track through this course with different videos with different experts focusing on the different topics. So, and what we also do all the way through this course is we recommend to you different resources, because this is 3 webinars of 2.5 hours talking about 8 interventions plus the critical enablers. So we're moving reasonably fast through these topics. It's designed to engage senior policymakers, managers, people planning programs. However, many of the people we tested the program with, who are stimulant experts on the ground, said in fact testing the course was the first time they'd ever received specialist training on stimulants themselves. So we've also had lots of requests from civil society to be able to use this toolkit, and we've therefore included resources like this excellent resource from Eurasia on how to work with NPS. We've included these resources so that those people who want to go beyond the baseline that we're providing can come and look at these additional resources. We also recommend the e-learning course from the Club Drug Clinic in London and the chemsex tools from Asia Catalyst. So this model gives you a baseline, but it also links you to a lot of really strong practice resources that you can then go on to look at. And we're now going to you're leading on this one, Monica, yeah? You want me to carry on? Okay. So, right. So I'm really pleased that UNODC have also started to stand strong behind the idea of stimulant prescribing. I think we've all understood the value of opiate agonist therapy, that prescribing opiate agonists allows us to engage people, it allows people to step away from problematic daily using, and it gives us a chance to connect people with healthcare and harm reduction. Now, for a long time, we've been talking about stimulant substitution programs or stimulant pharmacotherapies as if they were this sort of very radical set of interventions that really hadn't been studied very well. In reality, these have been interventions we have been using since the 1960s. They have not been as rigorously researched as we would like, but I think we need to stop talking about them as interventions requiring more research, as if that's somehow the fault of the intervention, and to instead describe them as highly promising interventions that merit more research. And I think if we can change the discourse to saying, this is working, it's really valuable, but we should research it more, that sets the mandate. And to have UNODC publishing a discussion paper highlighting the importance of pharmacotherapies within the range of a psychosocial drug treatment model, for me, is something I'm really happy to see, and I particularly acknowledge Gilberto Guerra, who was the person who pushed for this to be pushed forward. So what we're going to show you now is, in the video that we have supporting pharmacotherapies, we have 2 speakers. The first speaker is Richard Pates, who is from Wales, and he is going to talk about a study that was done with amphetamine sulfate users back in the 1980s and 90s. And I just want to show you how long this work has been happening for. The second video is bringing us right up to date with a very exciting project that's been taking place here in Prague with Synonym Project. And rather than showing you the video, we've got David here who's going to talk to us live about the initiative. So let's first show you the project from Synonym, from Wales. Oh no, sorry, I've gone too far. Can we go back? Sorry, I went.
So my name is Richard Pates. I'm a clinical psychologist, and although I'm now retired, I worked in the addiction field for about 30 years, establishing a community clinic. Okay, I want to talk about the early experience we had in Cardiff, which is a big city, or a fairly large city in the west of Britain, in Wales. And back in the 1980s and early 90s, we had more of an amphetamine problem than a heroin problem. We were concerned because we weren't getting people into service, and we knew that there was a problem, and especially from the start of the HIV epidemic, HIV and certainly hepatitis C, there was an urgent need to try to reduce injecting and also to try to help people. So I had a consultant who was very reluctant. She was very old-fashioned, but we had a senior registrar who was interested in doing some research on this, so I worked with him. And we had a project which had aims to reduce injecting, to reduce the use of street amphetamine, and to stabilise lifestyle in terms of sex work and criminal behaviour. We recruited 14 people, one of whom never turned up for the first appointment, 2 of whom dropped out early, and 1 had a transient psychotic episode, so we didn't include him. We excluded people who had a BMI of less than 17.5 because that was considered an anorexic, anyone who had mental health problems, and anyone who was using opioids. We had them coming into treatment 3 times a week, and we would work with them as a group, so we would have work on group discussion, and they were prescribed dexamphetamine, oral dexamphetamine, on a daily basis. The doses started at 30 milligrams per client, and they increased to a maximum of 60 as and when it was needed. This experiment ran for several months, and we found that there were very good results from this. We had an overall reduction of street amphetamine use from something like an average of 40 grams a week down to about 1 gram a week, 1.5 grams a week. 6 of the people had been sex workers, and 5 of them stopped sex working. Reduction in crime and an improvement in general health. So it then became something that we could see there were benefits. There were no side issues. We felt that we were getting people in and they were being successfully treated. We did later on, in the 90s, do a much bigger experiment, a random controlled trial with Manchester, where we did it on a much bigger basis, and that was similarly successful, and it showed the feasibility of doing that. I'm very convinced that it is important to do, and interestingly, one of the concerns that people had was that it may make people, would we make people more psychotic? Would we more incline towards mental health problems? Tom Carmouth in the north actually did some work and didn't exclude people with mental health problems, and found that they could actually treat it much better because they were prescribing and it was in controlled doses. I think that amphetamine has been hugely underrated in our country, and one of the things I knew people who had been using for many years and suffered in their 40s from things like strokes and brain hemorrhages. So there is an urgent need for it, and provided it's controlled and providing it goes alongside counselling. It's no good just giving the drugs, but I think that's true also of other substitute prescribing. Then I'm convinced that it works very well.
My name is
Right, so rather than showing the video of David, which would be available to you if you are using the series, we actually have David with us here. So David, come up and talk to us about this project. So just to show that stimulant prescribing work has been going on from the 80s, 90s, in fact it has an even longer history back to the 1960s, but we've had this very exciting project during the pandemic. Sanonym have really stepped up to respond to the needs of people who are crystal meth users. Maybe, David, to start with, you could maybe just explain the history of crystal meth use in the Czech Republic and to help people understand why methamphetamine is so significant here.
Yeah. Welcome to Czech Republic, country with a strong tradition of crystal meth use. It's mainly named Pervitin. You probably heard of it. And among the vulnerable group of people who use drugs, the majority of them, more than half, are users of crystal meth, mainly injecting users. Like 99% of crystal meth users are injecting. So as Magdalena was talking about the coverage of syringes and so on, it's a strong topic in Czech Republic. We will have a special session on drug equipment, so I'm not talking more about this. We have different sources of crystal meth production. We have like typical cookers, producers in small amounts of crystal meth. The production was even during the communist time, from the 80s, there was a tradition of producing crystal meth, but nowadays other organizations like the Vietnamese community, etc., produce big amounts of not very good quality crystal meth. During the COVID, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were afraid about the lack of all substances on the market. We are promoting OST, bigger coverage, because we are also not very good at OST coverage in Czech Republic. There is a Friday session in the morning about Czech situation, so if you are interested, please come to this one. And we are promoting, because we are so strong, have so big community of crystal meth users, we are promoting substitution treatment for crystal meth users for a long time, and we were unsuccessful. And during the COVID, there was a momentum when we were talking about this subject. And it was possible that the official society of doctors, society of addictive diseases, released guidelines that were successfully affirming that methylphenidate can be used as a substitution treatment for crystal meth users.
So tell me, why, because we saw dexamphetamine being used by Dick and his team in Cardiff, why methylphenidate or Ritalin rather than dexamphetamine?
Of course, we would like dexamphetamine and also other stimulants that are very promising to use in the substitution treatment. The big advantage of methylphenidate, you know it as Ritalin or Concerta, is that it's already on the market in Czech Republic. It's a registered medicament which can be prescribed for people with ADHD. It's mainly used for children. This substance. So it is legally available, even if it has strict rules how to handle it, similar to opioids. But these guidelines was a breakthrough thanks to this, that you can prescribe Ritalin not only for people which diagnose ADHD, but also for addictive disease. It's true, we are in this way, it's still like medicalizing the topic, of course.
But it sounds like good harm reduction pragmatism. What drug is available? We're in a crisis. Let's do something now rather than thinking about the theory in the future. So maybe dexamphetamine would be a better option in the long term, but for people who were using crystal meth, it was nothing or methylphenidate. And so clearly doing Ritalin was a much better option than doing nothing.
Exactly.
Tell us about the program, how it works. How do people get connected with the program? How do they receive a prescription?
The actual setting in Czech Republic is that this program can begin to run at any service, at any drug services, even if it's harm reduction services or psychiatric ambulance. To be sincere, it's starting slowly than we expected, but at the harm reduction facility, needle and syringe program at Sananim, we begin to do it, and the entrance was quite easy, or the indication is for people that have strong crystal meth use in their anamnesis, but we choose to have people in a not so bad mental health condition. So if somebody was too much psychotic in the last weeks, that was some criteria to exclusion at the moment. So we would try to make it easier to see about the compliance to the medication and the program, and the results are similar as we already heard. There is no. Somebody would expect, maybe from the medical point of view, that there is a stop of other substances, there is a stop of crystal meth use. It's not that case, but regarding harm reduction, there is a strong decrease of use, and the people in the program gain more control over their usage. So they can decide more freely and locate the use of crystal meth to situations and locations where it's not so harmful, when it doesn't influence the arrival to work, their family situation, etc. So there was a strong decrease of regular crystal meth use, which was for many of people from our community, the toxic psychosis is something that happens a lot. We have users using crystal meth for 20 years, etc. So this is the mental health is really getting better.
Yeah, and I think the message from Dick Pates from Wales was that if people have mental health issues, that when we're in treatment, we're helping them and engaging them with that psychotic episode. With very uncontrolled drugs of very varying quality that are being used in street vulnerable settings, actually the risk of psychosis is much higher. So and I think it's worth hearing from Dick's work that they also later went on to include people with mental health problems, and they were able to manage them successfully. So I think it's understandable in trials that you don't burden yourself with too complex a population in the proving phase. Yeah. But we also understand that actually people with mental health conditions can actually be managed within these programs.
Another just to add to this idea, in Czech Republic, among the vulnerable community are a lot of polymorph users of other substances, users of what is available at the moment on the market or for them. So a lot of people are using opioids and crystal meth at the same time, also benzodiazepines, alcohol, etc. We know we want to try to use substitution treatments both for opioids and stimulants at the same time, but we are not yet there, but it's definitely something I would like to achieve.
Look, and I think this is the exciting journey. You start doing one component, then you see the opportunities to go to the next level. And I think, for me, the frustration, I think, in the UK is we stopped on this journey of innovation, and I really appreciate that other parts of Europe have kept on going in this journey.
It's not easy.
No, it's not, but we need the courage of always pressing on and looking at new opportunities. So look, I think we're coming, yes, so this is where the kit is available. Thank you, David. So let me invite David and Magdalena and Alexei, would you like to come up as well, and Monica? Let's do some questions and answers. So we'll have David from Sanonym, Monica from UNODC, Magdalena, who was speaking to you earlier, and then Alexei, who has been the consultant who's been working in Eurasia on the MPS stimulants, the equipment you saw being shown earlier, the toolkits you saw being shown earlier, the ones that that Alexei has developed. And Alexei was also in the video on MPS. You may not be able to see behind the mask, but it is him really. So, any questions you'd like to ask our stimulant experts and about this toolkit, or comments you have on your own work that you'd like to share with us?
Some wisdom.
Yes, Lynn. Right, let's just take two questions. So at the front, would you like to say one? Would you like your question as well? Yeah, if you want to do. Sorry, we need to talk into the microphone. Apologies. So the first question was about if you're giving stimulant prescribing to people, are they being given safer injecting advice if the majority of people are injecting in the Czech Republic? So let's ask David to answer that.
Advice about safe injecting is a big part of our work. In general, it's also about the coverage of harm reduction material. We try to deliver as much as possible of harm reduction material to the people. I'm so against this rule of exchange one by one, etc. It's a topic we will discuss, I think, tomorrow. And of course, we know that the majority of people that are in substitution treatment are also injecting. Of course, we try to do harm reduction regarding of stopping the spread of disease. So it's a lot about to have enough harm reduction material and about changing behaviors. We are promoting another waves of administration. We have also tried a lot of this break the cycle intervention from UK from many years ago. The tradition of injecting in Czech Republic is very strong, and it's not an easy thing to break.
Thank you very much.
I answered.
Thank you, David. That's great. And we had a surge of cocaine injecting in the town I come from during the pandemic, and having all the drug suppliers in our area giving out needles and syringes by the box load meant we didn't face the type of HIV outbreak that happened in Scotland. And I think getting drug users and drug suppliers involved in giving out needles and syringes is the only way to really effectively scale up access to the amount of needles and syringes that stimulant users are often needing, often outside office hours.
I have a question. Thank you for this useful webinar. My name is Vilda Parhomenko. I represent Women and Harm Reduction International Network, and I see many useful toolkits and recommendations for harm reduction for people who use stimulant drugs. And what's about gender-oriented approaches for women who use stimulant drugs? Have you some experience, recommendations, or toolkits? Because it's really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we acknowledge Ruth was also giving us some advice on the women's section, but let Monica can maybe explain the women's component of this toolkit.
We did address the topic of women who use stimulants in the training package. As explained, we showed just a small part of what is available. We do have video, shorts video from projects in Canada and in Africa and also in Spain. That have interventions that are tailored to meet the needs of women who use stimulant drugs. So we got the topic covered. Of course, it can be improved, but it's there. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ben Collins. The question for David. Very interesting work that you're doing, and also great work on the whole toolkit. Interesting work that you're doing with people doing crystal. Are people who identify as chemsex users crossing over and working with you on this, or are they not? Should I explain chemsex?
Sorry, I didn't understand well the question, so I was just clarifying with Magdalena. Chemsex is an issue in Czech Republic, but it's still like raising nowadays. But with crystal meth use, we have the sexual behavior of the people is changed by if you use crystal meth a lot, and we work with people in chemsex, in sex business, and I really didn't understand what's the question about. Sorry.
So no, I think you covered this. I think it was about the intersection between the issues. So I would encourage you. Ben leads the European Chemsex project, or Chemsex Forum, which actually in many ways is an international chemsex forum now. If you are interested in chemsex, I would really strongly recommend to join their e-list. It's a really useful resource for people working on chemsex. We also highlight chemsex work in Asia. And Asia Catalyst and Mainline have produced a really excellent set of toolkits on chemsex in Asia, which again is a resource I'd really encourage people to look at. It's one of those toolkits that we're recommending for people who want to go into more detail about some of those topics. We had a speaker, a question over here as well.
I'm Nebojša Zrasovic from Association Prevent from Serbia. At the same time, I'm president of Drug Policy Network Southeast Europe. We have rich experience in work with heroin, in harm reduction of injecting drug use. But I expected that in these core interventions will be more this which we can hear about pipes, about equipment for sniffing, about this what David said about pharmacotherapy. But it is not in these core interventions. These core interventions are same like for injecting drug. Only seventh point is for this type of stimulants. Nothing about inhalation, nothing about sniffing. Just one word, other commodities, and everything is in this word, other commodities. And maybe will be good to spread this core interventions and add these important things for harm reduction of sniffing drugs and drugs which are inhaled. Yeah. Yeah, and it is written that is based on extensive literature and expert participants and number of consultations. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the technical guide, it's the basis for the capacity building program. And in the capacity building package, we have extensive information about the pipes, how are they used, what are the harm reduction measures, and so on and so forth. So what is in the publication is, you know, sort of a short version, but it's explained in more detail when we are doing the trainings. And this is why, you know, we developed all these packages for face-to-face training and webinars and e-learning, self-learning, where all these other commodities, as are described there, are presented in detail.
There's some practicalities around how the UN is able to recommend guidance. I think we've had to be pragmatic about what we write in the guidelines and then what we can expand into the videos. You'll see the videos have lots of examples of outreach teams giving out methamphetamine pipes. We've got from Indonesia, Charisma are talking about their work giving out silver foil. So you'll see within the kit, it's people are strongly recommended to use the full range of harm reduction commodities, and we really hope, and particularly in the civil society testing, we really have gone through and said, this is what is in a safer snorting kit, this is what's in safer piping kits, so that when people are writing their budgets to big donors and big programmers, they won't be surprised when they say, we need lip gloss, we need straws, we need these types of harm reduction commodities. So we have been that explicit in the training package.
Sorry, I might have missed this, but so these toolkits that we're talking about, the online kind of versions of the workshop, are they available on the website for general access, or how does it work? And also, is there like a separate module on pharmacotherapy, or is it not really covered there? Thank you.
So the publication that you have, it's available on our website. We are now moving on the UNODC e-learning platform, and next year there will be 6 live webinars, 2 on amphetamines, 2 on cocaine, and 2 on new psychoactive substances. There is also a self-based module that we are developing right now. So people can, one on the substances, on the stimulants, and one on the interventions. And so this is what is going to be available starting from February next year on the e-learning platform. In the meantime, we are organizing webinars in our high priority countries, 24 high priority countries, and when we receive the request, we are delivering the webinar.
And yeah. Yeah,
yes,
it's all available. So there will be 3 versions of the course. There is one on methamphetamine, one on MPS stimulants, one on smoke cocaine, and they have regional specific information. So we talk about flakka and mephedrone in Eurasia. We talk about crystal meth and red methamphetamine tablets in Southeast Asia, and then we talk about both crack, but also the variations of smoke cocaine available in Latin America in producer countries. So you could also mix it up. So we've shown you bits of the MPS and bits of the methamphetamine. There's no reason why you couldn't make your own courses. You can leave bits out if they're not the most important bits for you to focus on. You can add in local speakers, local case studies. You can change the data to local data. But Monica's describing the official UN toolkit. We are also, for example, one of the doctors from New York who is involved in reviewing the course has asked if he can use it to train all primary health care physicians in New York. Magdalena and I are talking about running a version to try and drive forward the advocacy in the UK. And I think if other people take this resource on and use it to guide your work and to have the backing of UNODC behind this work, for me, that makes a very powerful set of resources that we can use and adapt. And nice for the community to be able to use UNODC resources with confidence, which I think is a big step forward and shows the partnership that we've been doing together. Let me get to Masha.
Thank you. I'm Marianna Masiewulska from European Network of People Who Use Drugs and also Polish Network of People Who Use Drugs. And I have a question to David. And I want to ask if you are collaborating with some user organization or maybe you are thinking about involving peers, in employing peers as a peers. And if so, why? And if not, why? How you? Because I am from Poland, and I see a big need for a collaboration between users and professionals, and we need to be asked what we need. Yes, and I want to ask you how it looks in Czech Republic. Okay, thank you.
Great. And we'll have probably one more question after this, so just if you have a final question.
I will be fast. David, I'm so happy you saw yesterday at the EuroNPUD meeting people from Czech Republic. For me, it's an accomplishment that few people from the community come to the meeting. I hope it's like another step for organizing part of the network in Czech Republic. I will talk about it more at Friday at the Czech session, but it has a long tradition, and the harm reduction services in Czech Republic were established mainly by experts in the 90s, and the voice of the community wasn't so strong in the times of establishing the services. And we nowadays we don't have a really functioning network yet. But I hope that this conference is also changing this paradigm toward this future, and to have more the voice of the community in the drug policy making.
Okay, and I'm just going to ask Alexei. Alexei, do you want to just tell people about some of the MPS resources you've developed in Eurasia? Because I think you've developed this really interesting toolkit. Do you want to maybe tell people about it?
Okay, thank you, Matt. Actually, you already have a very nice slide on these resources, but actually, together with the regional program office in Eastern Europe, we created the web outreach recommendations. So basically these are recommendations for people who want to provide online harm reduction services, for example, in darknet or in different messengers. You can find these recommendations on the official website of UNODC, both in English and in Russian. And also we have a series of short animated videos on HIV prevention, on hepatitis prevention among people who use stimulant drugs. They can be found in the official YouTube channel of UNODC as well. These are short but very catchy videos, so if you just pay a little bit of your time to watching these videos, I think you will be pleasantly surprised. And also we have a website both in English and in Russian as well, npsinfo.org. It is also for service providers and for people who use stimulant drugs. So please use these resources. And actually I am quite impressed with the work that UNODC has been doing for the last couple of years. I think it's become one of the main voices, so to speak, and maybe not voices, but knowledge hubs on what to do if you have such a problem as NPS or some other substances. So I think that this is a great work, and hopefully it will be continued, and hopefully with your participation, Matt, as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Alexei. I'm really happy that we're being able to showcase and champion really excellent resources that are being used, that have been developed. And I think so often there are really great resources out there that we don't know about, and actually being able to share with it among ourselves, what the best quality work is, allows us all to be more effective. Let me just ask our speakers if they want to make a closing comment, and then we'll wrap up.
Just to say thank you for the invitation, and that I've watched some of the webinars and I'm really impressed. There's a lot in there. They're well worth looking at, and really pragmatic sort of stuff around sleep, nutrition, hydration, all of these things that are very important to think about if you're using stimulants. So, yeah, and if anyone's got any questions about anything, feel free to come up and say hi during lunch. But thank you. And thanks to Matt for all the amazing work, Monica. Yeah.
Okay, I'm amazed by the guidelines, by the methodology you have made, guys, and it's unique that it has logo of UNODC, of WHO, and I think these materials need to be translated to national languages and used as an advocacy tool, because it has really strong logos on the front page. So I am already thinking how to do this in Czech context.
Well, for me, what is left is just to thank very much Magdalena and David and Alexei for joining us, to thank very much Matt for working together and to developing this workshop, but also all the training materials, and to thank you for showing in such large numbers, really. When I saw the room before the conference, I was like, oh my God, we are going to see a lot of empty chairs. But actually there aren't so many. So thank you very much for your interest, and we'll try to keep up with the expectation.